Do you automate the as is, or do you create nirvana from day one? Let's see what Francis Carden thinks of that. Francis, digitally native processes, straight through processing, process orchestration, you've loads of terms. What should organizations be focused on to get real value in the digital economy?
I think the automation of the as is typically occurs because organizations have not kept up with what's going on outside of these tactical automation capabilities like RPA or even Excel macros. That, you know, for the last 30 years, 40 years even, we've been building applications, we've been copying them, we've been customizing, configuring, you know, squeezing round pegs into square holes, or is it square pegs into round holes? Either way, it's this just conglomerate of sometimes thousands of applications that people are trying to just continuously optimize. But if you take a step back and think about how a digital native can build applications without all that legacy, right? Because business will say, or IT will say, well, we have to keep these legacy systems because that's what keeps the lights on. Well, there's some part of that's true, but how does a digital native bank start from nothing? They don't go and buy 4,000 legacy applications to become a bank. They're digitally native. They build this stuff. So the dream and the aspirations of business is not to think about optimizing as is processes only. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. There's value there. But to actually say, well, what technologies are out there that allow me to automate this? And it may just be, let's firstly automate a journey, which might be, I want to make the automation of getting a mortgage, or my customers getting a mortgage, really easy. I'm envious of that digital native company or my competitor. Let's be like them. Let's just make it really good. Just, you could build that with today's technologies. That's low code, that's process orchestration, that's some AI and some machine learning. You just build it. And you can build it so quickly that if you don't like what you built, you can throw it away. More likely, you're going to like what you built. And then you start putting that inside those and replacing those as-is processes. And over a very short period of time, you've actually got the significant ROI from optimization of a digital process, maybe plugging gaps with now some RPA, maybe to do some integration or whatever of the as-is processes. But your mission should be to remove the as-is process, because it's what you don't see, Kieran. Right? When you automate an as-is process, you go, oh, look at me, I've just saved, 2 FTEs. But underneath that, right, even you may have 10 FTEs in your group, there's probably significant numbers of FTEs, maintenance, license agreements, infrastructure, hardware that you're paying for because all you've done is kept it all. But if you start moving to these other technologies to rebuild that process into this digital nirvana, which is now possible much faster than it was even 5 years ago using low code, you start to become more like that digital native, very competitive, very differentiating, and your customers start to love the experience that they're having with you, and your employees are also happier because they're just able to satisfy the customers faster and actually get stuff done instead of this quagmire of applications that just drives everybody mad. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, but let me dig in a little bit. What's a digital native? Is that the equivalent of a citizen dentist that you've just created there? Because is the future code, low code, native dentists or not?
No, we'll just look at the telcos that came out of nowhere, right? They didn't go, or the banks or the financial institutions or the insurance brokers. And so there's lots of digital companies that started with nothing. You could argue Amazon, but that's kind of a legacy so long ago now, right? Amazon's quite an older company. But there's a lot of companies that started up that didn't go out and say, right, we need to go and buy, SAP and spend 10 years configuring it, right? They literally got going using these connecting capabilities and these digital platforms in which you can build real digital processes. And I talk a lot about low code, and in order to really make my point, you have to talk about the opposite of low code, which is high code. Most enterprises today that are legacy have this billions of lines of code that have to be looked after, babysat, configured, that don't touch this piece of code because it could bring everything crashing down. And all of that comes with a massive cost. Those digital native companies that literally can start up within a few months and start, these digital banks, they don't have to go and buy 4,000 legacy systems, yet they can still, open a checking account for you, allow you to pay other people, allow you to pay your bills, even give you a mortgage or a loan. So what have they done? Right? They've used these newer technologies to build and create digital businesses that can transact at the speed of light. And they were built on the way humans want to interact with you today, Whereas the old legacy systems were built really to automate the way people used to interact with people. You'd walk into a bank and get a mortgage. Well, we digitized that, but all the underlying systems are still there, even if you apply online. Whereas the digital native, it's just pure luxury to not have to have that big legacy debt and massive lines of code that you've got to support and maintain. That doesn't need to happen today.
I think you've lots of people salivating at the thought of actually not having technological debt. The future of work for digital natives then is not to write code, to be able to do amazing stuff, but not write the actual code itself. I'll chuck in a hand grenade, which I think you'll find interesting here. RPA, low code, no code, where does it fit in the spectrum?
Not even close. RPA jumped on a couple of bandwagons. They call themselves Intelligent Automation. They call themselves Hyper Automation. And they're now even calling themselves low code. Well, if an RPA vendor can call themselves low code, then I would say anybody that builds a PowerPoint animation is a citizen developer building low code. And of course, that's just as silly. What low code really is the ability for people to build new digital applications, right, that are truly digitized, and you build it on the low code, no code model. The fact that all of these visual IDEs, like PowerPoint, like RPA, like even, visualization of Excel macros, they're visual IDEs. They just allow people to drag and drop things. Very easy to build automations on top of the as is. But when you look at low code, no code, what it really means, this is why there's low code magic quadrants and waves and reports, but none of the RPA vendors are in those low code waves or quadrants or reports, is because low code is about digitalization of the processes in this new nirvana, as opposed to digitizing of all the old stuff with all the legacy debt that sits on top of it.
But what if we let all these digital natives or someone who's not a digital native but has got access to the tool loose on the network? Is that what you're suggesting here? Just everybody code, do what you want, satisfy the customer in the way that you want. How does it all sew together so you don't end up with 1,000 PowerPoint presentations running your vital operations?
God forbid, right? So no, absolutely not. So if you read and delve into what low code, no code really is, not what the RPA vendors tell you it is, then you realize it's actually IT and business collaborating. IT have your back. They provide all of the governance, the security, the infrastructure. Does it run on premise? Does it run on cloud? Are we compliant to all of the regulations that are out there? They then provide a foundation for which those citizen developers and those businesses build within those constraints without code or low code, no code, but they're building it on top of that. It's a bit like you're building a strong foundation from which business can go play, yes, but it's definitely not constraining business to be able to go build. It's actually making sure you've got their back so that when they build something that they're really proud of, they can release it to live quite quickly because IT's been there with them all along. And anybody that thinks that you can go build applications without having that, someone having your back, i.e. IT and the infrastructure team and the compliance team, is just dreaming. And that when you pull those two together, that's what low code is. If you go read the real low code platform reports, you will see anybody trying to do this with just citizen developers going building stuff without that foundation for your organization, specific to your organization, specific to the way you work. Because if you're in finance, it's different to if you're in healthcare, it's different if you're in retail. But you need those people from IT having your back. I mean, otherwise it's gonna be a disaster. It doesn't work.
So who runs the business? IT or the actual business themselves, or do we care in this modern age?
Oh, absolutely. You've got to have collaboration. I mean, there's just too much. Look, I mean, you've seen these systems that have been hacked, all these businesses, I mean, that's going to occur. Security, compliance, and governance is fundamental to the success of the business. It can bring a business to its knees, right? Especially with the fines and the way it's going now. So who runs the business really is the CEO and the board. They'll tell you what you're trying to achieve. Who has the ideas and the creativity of how to interact with customers and how those interactions should occur across all these different channels, and who builds stuff that's reusable and provides a fantastic experience. Let's be honest, everybody wants to provide a fantastic experience for their customers. So the outcome that they achieve for what they're trying to do is fantastic, and dream about fantastic. That's not the case with all this legacy stuff. It's really hard to deliver a fantastic outcome for any process in the business unless you digitize that process. So it's the IT providing the backbone for business to own the business experience, but your governance and compliance and security and everything that goes with the fact that listen, if you come into work every morning knowing that someone's got your back, that you know that you can't build something that's going to be released, that's going to expose all of your spreadsheets or all of your data fields to some external process, you're okay. But we don't want to constrain those business people from dreaming and saying, hey, listen, I wonder if we could build this process. What would it look like? Can we expose this to a beta capability? Can we expose it to some customers? Or can we expose it to our employees? So we want business to have that creativity with those process excellence you talked about and the center of excellence where they're dreaming up these great ideas and putting them into practice. You can do that in the low code model, but you've got to have that foundation.